Hello and welcome to this webinar on CRM functionality within SAP Business One. My name is Ketan Solanki, and for the next hour or so we'll be going through various features that are available. So to start off with, we'll have a look at the agenda for today's webinar. So we're going to be looking at how we can store customer-related information on the master record. We'll also be having a look at the customer service, or specifically service calls functionality, maintaining of the contacts, tracking opportunities and activities, and finally we'll be having a look at campaigns functionality. So and then at the end we'll have a Q&A session, and you can enter your questions within the GoToMeeting panel, and we'll run through those. So to start off with, we'll be looking at master record in SAP. So I'll bring up an existing customer record. Mexitech. You'll probably be aware of most of this functionality, so you can store general information about the customer, the name, the ABN, general contact details. But the most important CRM related functionality is around contact persons, and the fact that you can store multiple contact persons per customer without any limits. So I already have, in this case, 4 contact persons, and I can create an additional one simply by going into define new, and then I can say give it a name, and then just a bit more detail. Position might be sales manager. And you can also put their phone number, the individual phone number, the individual email addresses, and so on. And now you can also add additional UDFs against the contact person as well. And you set one of these as the default contact person for the entity. Just like you can have multiple contact persons, you can also have multiple addresses. Again, there aren't any limit to the number of addresses you can have, and I mean these would come in handy not only from a sales perspective, but if you're doing service, then you can assign that call or technician and put in the address details of where they need to go. Another little feature that was introduced in the SAP, one of the later versions, was the fact that now you can open up a particular address in browser map. So if I clicked on this show location in web browser, it will go, or in this case, the Google Maps, and it will pick up that address and it'll show it to me on the Google Maps. So the way this is set up is within SAP under Administration, System Initialization, General Settings, and in the Services tab, there's a map service setting. And in here you can define which map service you want to use, and also what parameters to pass when you click on that button. So it's fairly configurable, and you can use whichever site you want to use with this. So just going a bit further on other information you can store about a customer. You can also put in the any additional documentations in the attachments tab. So this could be anything from the credit application to some other contracts and so on, and this becomes a central repository, and it's available for everyone. And if you clicked on the display tab, then it would show that particular document on screen in its default application. You also have the remarks tab where you can just put some general information as well as a picture of the customer, whatever is appropriate. So then if you focus on this top section here, we've got the ability to see, the account balance and so on. But the important CRM related function is the fact that you can go into the open opportunities for this customer, and then from here you can drill into the individual opportunities and see what's the situation with each one of those. And we'll be focusing on sales opportunities shortly. The other useful feature down at the bottom right corner is this "You Can Also" option. And as soon as you click on it, there are a number of different things you can do. So you can look at service calls, you can look at activities, you can look at opportunities, recurring transactions, blanket agreements, service contracts, and also you can launch new transactions from here, depending on what you want to do. So what we are going to do next is look at the opportunities module and see what you can do here. So you can access this from this create opportunity section, so which will create a new opportunity for this customer, or you could go into the opportunities menu item and then from there open up opportunity. You might recall that this option was previously called sales opportunities, but I think since 9.0 or 9.1 it's now called opportunity, because you can create an opportunity against a customer or a supplier. So you could even have an opportunity for a supplier and track that through SAP. So I guess a bit of background, what would you use the opportunity module in SAP for? Well, it's generally used for sales or rather opportunities with business partners which have a long sort of lead time, and there is a cycle, a predefined cycle and various stages that you have to go through to get to the end of that opportunity. So you wouldn't use it for a scenario where you were just doing a simple quote, and the customer would accept or reject the quote, but you definitely use it where you were going through something like a tender process, or somewhere where the sales cycle and the time frames are longer than a week, or depending on what's most appropriate for the business. So what we'll do is we'll create an opportunity for customer Maxi Tech. So I will click on the create opportunity from the You Can Also, and that brings up my my customer pre-populated. I can also select the contact person I'm dealing with at the customer in relation to this opportunity. I can assign this opportunity to one of my salespeople, and then I'll start filling out the information. So I can give the opportunity a name. So it may be that this is in relation to the Commonwealth Games in Gold Coast. And so there's a start date, and let's say I think I'm going to be able to close this within 100 days. The system automatically calculates on that basis that I'll have this landed and completed by 1st of December, and I can enter in a potential amount. So let's say at this stage I haven't done any quoting or anything like that, but at a step I believe this opportunity is worth $200,000. You'll notice that the system automatically comes up with a weighted amount, which is basically based on the stage that you're in within the opportunity cycle and the weighting you've given to that stage, this amount will change. You can also define a level of interest, and again, this is just a drop-down list. So you can say, high, low, medium, and you can define these yourself. And then the interest range is sort of what sort of products are they interested in from your offering. So again, it's a drop-down list, and you can create your own list here. So maybe the customer is interested, in this case, the opportunity is regarding printers and related consumables. And the primary focus, let's say, is printers. Then in the general tab, I can define a project. I can also, there's a bunch of additional drop-down lists where I can put more information. So it might be industry, information source, and as you know, that you can also rename some of these fields and call it something else if that description wasn't appropriate. But these are additional drop-down lists. There's a general remarks area. But the main guts of the opportunity management is in the stages area. This is where you sort of progress the opportunity through your sales cycle, and you can define your own stages. So if I went into this stage and clicked on Define New, I can see, in my case, I've got lead at 6%, first meeting at 20%, and all the way down to receiving an order at 90%. So these are the weightings. So depending on the quoted amount and the weighting, you'll see that amount in the pipeline. So let me just add this opportunity to start off with. And once I've added it, I'll go back. And from here, I can now, let's say that we've got a lead, and now we want to progress this. So I'll add a row, and let's say we're up to the first meeting stage, and so the potential amount has increased. We still haven't quoted anything. I can then create an activity and put the details of what that meeting was and what was discussed and so on. So if I click on the arrow here, that opens up the activity screen. So activities are basically an area in the system where you record all communications, discussions, it could be a phone call, a meeting, a task, whatever that is. You use that to track. And then you have, different categories and subcategories of what the activity is about. You can assign this to a different person in the organization if you choose to, and then you put in a remark. So in this case, I'm just initial scoping or discovery meeting. So I'll call it a discovery meeting, and I can put a whole bunch of text here. So if anyone else wanted to know where things were up to, they just come in here and look at this. And I'll just add this away. And then if I then get to a point where we can create a quotation, I'll add another row. And now let's say we're up to the quoting stage. At this point, I can link a transaction in the system that I might have previously done, or I can create a new one. So if I just go in and say, I'm going to do a quote, and from here I can pick up one that was done previously, or I could create a new one by clicking the new button. So I think we're not focusing on creating quotations here, so I'm just going to pick up an existing quote that I've already done and assign it. And as soon as I try to assign it, it says, do I want to update the amount and the gross profit? And if I say yes, you can see that the potential amount has now been picked up from the quotation that I linked. So if I go into my quote, the pre-tax total is 178,000. And that's what's reflected here, and the weighted amount is just basically 60% of that. If I update that and go into the potential area, now I can see that the main screen has also been updated to reflect this. And so you continue with this. So you keep adding more stages, and you keep adding activities, and you keep adding quotations and so on. You can come in here and look at all the activities that have happened in relation to this opportunity from the related activities. And you can also click on the related documents to see all the quotes and orders and so on that have happened. So other things you can also do here is you can define, if there's a partner you're going in with, you can define that. If there are competitors you're up against, then you can also put those in. And I mean, these are all drop-down lists that you can define your own information. And so you also have an attachments tab where you can attach all the paperwork. And then finally, you have the summary tab where you define whether you have won or lost the opportunity. I mean, at this stage, it's open. Eventually, it's either a winning or a losing situation. And so once you check that, then you have options to specify reasons of why you won the opportunity. So, you know, it could be that your price was right, but you also have a good relationship. And you update that. And so, you know, it's saying the opportunity has been won. Do we want to close all the related activities? Yeah, why not? And so that really then completes the cycle in relation to, you know, working through an opportunity. So let us now look at some of the reports that are available in SAP in relation to opportunity management. So let's have a look at this one. There's a whole heap of them. We'll have a look at a couple of them. So there's one that's called the opportunities pipeline, and that basically shows you a visual you know, map of where things are or what your pipeline looks like. And so from left to right, you have you know opportunities that are at the beginning of the sales cycle, and on the right side you have things that are close to completion. And at the bottom here you can see a summary of where different opportunities are, and you have the total pipeline value as well as a weighted amount. And you can double click on any one of these slices of the cylinder to see the list of opportunities part of that particular stage. You can also filter these screens, so you might say, well, I just want to see what Bill's opportunity pipeline looks like. Then you do that and do a refresh, and then you're only seeing Bill's opportunities. So that's one. The other one that's quite useful is the opportunity forecast report. And again, there's a whole heap of filters here, but the main thing is you can group this by, say, for example, salesperson or by customer, and then you can also have a subgroup. So if I had said, group by salesperson, then by territory, and then if I open it up, I can see, firstly, I see a summary view that, I've got X number of dollars worth of opportunity in each one of these guys' pipelines. And then if I expand further, then, I can see the detail of what those opportunities are. And it's a good tool for managers to follow up with people on where they are in various opportunities, where they're up to. Okay, so that's sales opportunities. We've already had a brief look at activities, but we'll go into a bit more detail now. So firstly, as you see, you could create activities in a number of different places, including against opportunities. You can also just create an activity directly from the customer master record. And in this case, it's just a general activity. Activities can also be launched from business partners, and then activity screen. And then from here, you'd have to pick the customer. So there's a few ways of doing it. And once you start entering your information, you can categorize and subcategorize the activity, define the classification of the activity, general remarks, and so on. But what's also interesting is that you can also link these opportunities to any one of those sales documents or even some other documents through the system, which means that the activity is not only related to a customer, but it's also related to a specific document. And so let's see how you could do that. First, I mean, obviously you can do it from here, where you go in and say, I'm going to link this particular quotation to this activity. However, there's another way of doing it, which is you could be on a marketing document or any transactional document, and you can right-click and create a new activity. Okay, and when I do that, the link back to the source transaction is automatically there. And so let's say if I was chasing up this particular invoice for payment, and I've made a phone call, and let's say this is relating to credit control, and it's my first call, then I can say, spoke to Maxi, said check is in the mail. So, and I can put a longer description here, but if I just add that, now if you said that check's in the mail, then I probably want to make sure that the check shows up. So what I can do is, after I've created this initial activity of what my conversation was, I can create what we call a follow-up. And again, I can then put it to a future date. So let's say, I just want to make sure by the 25th I have received confirmation, or I've received the check, and I can tick the reminder box to remind me to, or what will happen is, if I tick the reminder box, then the messages and alerts will pop up telling me that I've got to check on this thing. So I can just say here in the content, confirm that check has been received, and I can add that away. Now, as I'm creating these activities are also going to start showing up in the calendar within SAP. So this is one that is the continuation, and I've put a reminder for myself Friday. But also any activities that have been created and are still open with a date in the past show up on the messages and alerts screen as activities scheduled for today. So anything overdue will come up in a list here, and then you can click into it and follow up and assign it to someone else and so on. Now all these the activities and the opportunities can also be accessible from the SAP Business One mobility app. So that's available for Android as well as iOS devices. So you could go onto the App Store, the Google Play Store, and search for SAP Business One, and you'll find the app that's available, and anyone who's licensed for SAP can also access the app. There's a bit of setup to be done on your server to allow access from outside for the app. Okay, so let's move along now. So we've looked at activities and opportunities. Next thing we're going to look at is service calls. So in SAP, there is a module relating to service where you can log cases and issues in relation to product that you've sold, where you need to now action and do something to fix a problem. So let's look at some of the setup first. So in SAP Business One, there's a concept of an equipment card. And the equipment card is related to any, so firstly, you can have the equipment card automatically created when you sell a serialized item. And the other scenario is that you can manually add the equipment card. So if you haven't sold the item, but you're servicing it, then you can manually create that equipment card. But just looking at some of the setups, firstly under administration, system initialization, general settings, under stock, there's a checkbox that says auto create custom equipment card. So if this checkbox isn't ticked, then when you sell a serialized item, it will not create the equipment card. However, if this is ticked, then by default, every serialized item sale will result in an equipment card being created. So that's one setting. The other setting is on the item master data itself. If I open up a serial tracked item, this setting is only available on serialized items. So this is a serialized item. You can define a warranty template. So a warranty template is, what is the coverage and the contract that you have with the customer in terms of service and support. So I've just gone into the details of this. So we've got a gold warranty, which is relating to serial numbers. So you can have contracts that are just customer related or product group related. I've got one that's linked to a serial item, and what we're saying is that we've got to respond within 2 hours, and we've got to provide a resolution within 2 days. And the duration of the warranty is 24 months. And I want a reminder in the system 30 days prior to expiration in case I can go in and offer the customer an extended warranty. Then we have the coverage, where days of the week when the warranty coverage is available, and what it includes: parts, labor, travel. Is it covering weekends and public holidays? You can put some general remarks and attachments to the template as well. So what will happen is then when you sell one of these serialized items, the system automatically will create a custom equipment card based on the setting we saw earlier. But if you've got a warranty template, then it will also create a contract, a service contract. So let's have a look at this. So if I just went in, did an invoice against a customer, and I pick a serialized item. So firstly, when I add this, system will ask me, what serial number have you sold? So I just select one, update, and as soon as I add this, because of my settings, we'll automatically have an equipment card and a service contract created for that serial number and this customer. So let's go and have a look. If I go into service and look at equipment card, and if I go and look at the last one, I can see that's the serial number that I just sold. I can see currently there are no service calls against this. I've just created the equipment card. I can see there's a service contract that started today and is going to run for 24 months. I can see the sales data. I can see that it was sold on invoice number 453. And I can drill and look at that. I can also see the history of when it was bought and when it was sold. And I can put some attachments against this. So let's now just drill into this service contract just to see what that looks like. So it basically picks up the template and populates the information. So we can see we've got the customer, the start date and the end date being 24 months. It's a warranty service. It's based for serial number, and response time, resolution time. I can put some additional remarks if I want. There's the item that's part of this contract. There's the coverage information coming from the template. And again, I don't have any service calls yet. What I can also do is, if this was, not a warranty, but a general, regular sort of a contract, I could also set up some recurring transactions so that, I might be invoicing this customer monthly for the service. So I just use the recurring transactions and create a template and then just build a customer on schedule. Okay, so if I now go in and look at a previous equipment card that's already existing, here's one, and I can see that this particular one has 2 service calls. The first one had some printing issues, and then the second one was the printed drum was making noise. So from here I can drill in and look at that particular service call, see what it was about, and so on. But let's say we create a new one against that same serial number. So if I go in, say, add a new one. Now here I can pick the customer and all that, and then enter the serial number. Or I could just come in and type in the serial number, and if the customer equipment card exists, then everything else gets populated for me. So there's a creation time. You'll notice that there's a call ID here. Now this call ID is now allocated to this particular service call. So unlike sales-related transactions, if you don't hit the add button, or if you hit the add button after someone else has already posted one of those transactions, then you might get a different number. In this case, this number is what's allocated. So if you're on the phone entering this service call, you can give the customer the number right away, and you'll be sure that it won't change. So you can define various call statuses. So these are just, again, user definable. By default, everything starts off as open, and then you can change the statuses. You put a subject in, so you can say that maybe color printing not working, for example. And let's say it came through our email, and let's say it's a mechanical issue to do with toner, and it's possibly a user issue. So that's what I've set up for now. I can see that the person who's handling the call has been assigned. And if I just add this away, and then from here I can go in and select the location where the call or the technician needs to go. I can go in and put some general remarks in. I can also create activities against this service call. So, and again, that just takes us back into the SAP activities screen. There's a solutions knowledge base as well, so I could go in and say to the system, can you please recommend a solution? And in this case, the system has looked at the bunch of existing solutions, and it's found that maybe the answer is to install the correct print driver. I could choose that particular one, or I can go in and find some other ones. So I could go in and say, well, let's have a look at all the solutions relating to this particular item. There's a whole heap of them. if I wanted to get another one, and there's a heap of detail about it, but I'm happy to take the recommended solution. So, and then there's a whole heap of text about what should be done to make it work, and you can also have some attachments linked into the solution knowledge base. So this is the first thing I'm going to try. I could call the customer back and tell them to try that, and I can log an activity to the fact that I've done that. Now, it could also be that this item is not under warranty. So when we first entered the call, it worked out that there is a service contract, and it's valid till 2019, and it also, based on the contract, it's also worked out when we need to respond by and when we need to resolve the issue by. So that all gets captured right away when we log the call. So now we may still create a quote to the customer to resolve the issue. We might have to provide them some pricing. So that's where you come into the related documents, click on the details, and click on new. Now here you can create AR as well as AP documents. So if you needed to order a part relating to this call, you can even raise a purchase order. But let's start by creating a quote. So it opens up the quote screen, and then I can say, well, got some labor to do some assessment maybe, and I can add that. And then once I've added this, that information becomes part of the service call. We can see a list of all the transactions that have happened in relation to this. By the way, currently not available, but in the next release, version 9.3, you'll have a transaction called an RMA, so Returns Material Authorization, which will allow you to bring, give the customer an RMA number against which they can send the article back to you, and then you can then convert that into an actual return back into stock. Whereas currently, you do not have that option. So you can create all these transactions through the system. And you also notice that the service call can be to a customer, but it also can be a purchasing to a supplier. So if you were returning something to your supplier, you can even create a service call for that. If you go into the history tab, you can see all the information, what's happened on this call, when it was changed, and so on. And in the scheduling tab, you can also now add multiple schedules. So if I add a row, I can then add some sort of a schedule relating to this particular call. Start date. Not sure why that's giving us an error, but you're able to create multiple schedules and assign different technicians, and from there, that information is also available within the calendar. So eventually you work through this, you can create invoices and so on, and then once the work is complete, then you just change the status to closed. There's a bunch of reports that you can run relating to this. So you can look at my service calls, so things that are allocated to you. You can look at my open service calls. You can look at my overdue service calls. You can also look at various reports. So there's a whole bunch of reporting relating to this. All right, so moving on to the next topic, which I'll quickly run through, which is the Outlook integration capabilities within SAP. So a lot of you may or may not be aware that there is an Outlook add-in for SAP Business One. And when you've got that set up, you get an extra ribbon in the add-ins tab where you can log in and choose the database you want to connect into. And once you've connected, then you can do a whole heap of things like save an email as an activity, synchronize contacts, synchronize appointments, and so on. So you see these options here with synchronize, quick synchronize, and so on. So for example, if I went in and found a contact, I could then pick them up and say, synchronize this. And then it's going to ask me, so which customer do I want to synchronize this to? So if I pick up Maxi Tech, and I can say create a new contact person or update an existing one. And so if I clicked on synchronize this, it says contact is associated with following business partner has been created. So if I went back into SAP and brought up my customer Maxi Tech and looked at the contact persons, I can see now that there's a contact person called tax support. So if I come back into my emails area, and if I clicked on a particular email, then I could go in and say synchronize, or sorry, save email as an activity. And then basically the system would go in and add, or give you some options on adding the email as an activity. So there is a lot of material on the internet as well about this in terms of the functionality and all the things that you can do. So have a look at that as well. So moving on to the final topic for today, which is the campaign management functionality within SAP. So this is something new again, version 9.1. They introduced this concept of campaign management, and so what it allows you to do is create a list of customers or leads, and then generate a campaign against them, and create a list that you can then export off to another system to mail out, or you could send the mails from SAP. However, the problem is that there isn't a interface coming back, so you still have to manually track how successful the campaign was. But let's just have a look at what you can do. So there's a campaign generation visit. It's under Business Partners campaign generation visit, and from here you can create a new campaign or look at an existing one. Give it a name, And then it's a campaign type, so it could be email, mail, fax, phone call, and so on. I'll just choose the option other. Target group, so you can do campaigns, suppliers as well. So in here, I can pick a list that I've already created, or I can create a new list. Right? So here's an existing list that I already have of all the customers, and I've called it TG1. These are the people I wish to include in this particular campaign. So what I can do is I can just select that. There's a start date, and then there's a finish date for the campaign. And you can assign a template as well if you wanted to. Move on. So here it's already selected all the customers that I had in my list. I can add more customers here manually if I wanted to. But what the nice thing over here is that you can create an activity and assign it to a person based on this campaign. So you could use this to create a list for your salespeople, for example, to follow up, or you could create a list for your marketing or customer service people to follow up. So this will do is create an activity back against these customers and assign it to the person you select. Okay, so you can either add these customers in manually, but a lot of you would know that with 9.2 now, you can easily create a list. It could be a query or whatever it may be. If you have a list in Excel, you can then just pick up that information and paste it back into the grid. So the list could be coming from anywhere. Right? It could be based on a query, it could be an actual list, or it could be typed out over here. So I'm just going to clear this and let's go back and select the customers again. And we've got the create activity ticked, and then I'm just going to save the campaign and execute and generate a list. And I'll save that. And so there's my campaign list that I've asked the system to generate for me. And the campaign has been created. If I go back into the campaign, I can see that all the activities have been created as well. And if I right-clicked and said, show me the related activities, I can see all the activities generated on the basis of this campaign. If I come back to the customer master record, and if I look at the related activities against this customer, now this is a history of all the communications, but there's the activity that I just created relating to this campaign. And then it's up to the salesperson to follow up. So the other thing you can also do once you've generated the campaign is you can track the sort of responses you've been having. So I can say, well, these 2 customers have responded, or these 3 customers have responded, and this guy is interested, this guy is interested, and this person is not interested. Okay, so that's an update on what the response was. And then if I look at the reports, I can see a campaign list report, and I can see the last campaign we contacted 7 customers, 3 of them responded, So the response percentage is 42%. And we can also then, if there's an opportunity one on the back of that, that information can also be updated, and then you can see how successful you have been.